I always thought secrets would eventually come to light, but I never imagined his would explode in front of our entire family. I'm Emily, and for years I thought I knew the man I married. Daniel was loved by everyone, my family, his friends, even our neighbors. He was the perfect husband, the kind who remembered every anniversary, helped around the house, and seemed genuinely invested in our lives. Together, we'd built what I thought was a rock-solid life, a home filled with love, memories, and laughter. But one evening, everything changed. It was a family dinner at our home, a night meant for laughter and connection. My parents, his parents, and our closest friends were there. Daniel seemed like his usual self, charming everyone with his stories, making jokes, and putting on the warm smile everyone adored. I was proud to be his wife, until that very moment. Throughout the evening, I noticed Daniel checking his phone more than usual. It wasn't like him to be so distracted during family time. But then, out of nowhere, I saw it. A slight smirk as he glanced down at a message. He quickly put his phone away, but that look, that split-second expression, had me on edge. I felt a strange sense of unease, a chill that I couldn't shake. What could he be hiding? I tried to ignore it, to brush it off as paranoia. But then, just as we were serving dessert, his phone buzzed loudly on the table. Everyone paused, eyes drawn to the screen as a message preview flashed across. And there it was, a message from a name I'd never seen before. I miss you. Can't wait to be with you again. I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands shaking as the words registered. The room fell silent, every single person frozen, staring at the phone and then at Daniel. The man I had trusted with my heart, my life, was living a lie, one that was now out in the open for all to see. He stammered, trying to brush it off, but it was too late. The damage was done. I looked around, seeing the shock, the hurt on our family's faces. My mind was spinning with a mix of betrayal, anger, and humiliation. The truth was no longer hidden. It had unraveled right in front of everyone we knew. And as I stood there, feeling the weight of his betrayal sink in, I realized that the life we'd built, the love I'd believed in, had been nothing but a facade. The man I thought I knew had been living a double life. And there was no hiding it now. The silence after that message felt deafening, a heavy weight pressing down on me as the dinner continued. Everyone tried to pretend nothing had happened, that Daniel's phone hadn't just buzzed with a message meant for someone else, but I couldn't ignore it. The words, "I miss you. Can't wait to be with you again," played over and over in my mind, each repetition making me feel a new wave of anger, confusion, and betrayal. I forced myself to get through the evening, smiling as best as I could, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone, especially with both our families watching. But inside, I was crumbling. Every look Daniel gave me, every casual laugh he shared with our family, felt fake, like I was watching a stranger who had been wearing my husband's face. That night, as soon as our guests left, I confronted him. "Daniel," I began, forcing myself to sound calm, though my hands were shaking. "What was that message on your phone? Who is she?" He looked at me, his face blank for a moment before a flicker of something I couldn't quite identify crossed his eyes. Fear. Guilt. I couldn't tell. He took a deep breath, rubbing his hand over his face, and gave me a tired smile. "Emily, it's nothing. Just a work thing that got out of hand. You're reading too much into it." "I miss you. Can't wait to be with you again? That's a work thing?" I asked, incredulous. The way he brushed it off so casually made my blood boil. It was like he thought I was stupid, like he could lie to my face and I'd just believe him. He sighed, putting his hands up in a defensive gesture. "I'm telling you, it's not what you think. Just trust me on this." Trust him? The words stung as if he were mocking me. I wanted to believe him. For years, Daniel had been my partner, the person I'd built my life with. The thought of him betraying me felt like a punch to the gut, like I was losing the foundation of everything I'd believed in. But the doubts had been planted, and there was no getting rid of them now. As the days passed, I found myself noticing things I had ignored before. Daniel had always been a bit private with his phone, but lately it was worse. He took it everywhere with him. even into the bathroom, keeping it face down on the table whenever we were together. If I asked about his day, his answers were short, vague, like he was brushing me off. And when he was home, he seemed distracted, always looking at his phone, his mind a million miles away. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that maybe he was just stressed, busy with work, or going through something he didn't want to share. But every time his phone buzzed or he glanced away when I entered the room, the knot of suspicion tightened. One evening, I decided to follow him. I felt ridiculous, like one of those paranoid wives in a bad movie. But I needed to know the truth. I needed to see if my fears were justified, or if I was just going crazy. Daniel had told me he was going to meet a friend for dinner, and part of me wanted to trust him. But the other part, the part that had been living with this unease for weeks, wouldn't let it go. So I got in my car and followed him. He drove to a restaurant across town, one we'd never been to together. It was a small, dimly lit place, the kind of spot where couples might go to avoid prying eyes. I watched as he parked his car, glancing around as if checking to make sure he hadn't been followed. My heart was racing, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then I saw her. A woman walked up to him, tall and elegant, her hair perfectly styled. She was dressed like she'd put thought into it, like this was a special night. Daniel greeted her with a smile, the kind of smile he used to reserve for me. They hugged, holding each other just a little too long for comfort, and I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to get out of the car, to confront them both right then and there, but something held me back. Maybe it was the shock, the disbelief that this was really happening. Or maybe it was the realization that if I confronted him now, I'd have to accept the truth, that he'd been lying to me, that the man I'd loved and trusted was living a double life. I sat there watching as they entered the restaurant, laughing, completely unaware of the destruction they'd left behind. My mind was spinning, a million questions flooding in at once. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Had he ever loved me at all? I drove home in a daze, the weight of the betrayal settling over me like a dark cloud. When he returned later that night, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine, I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I felt numb, hollow, like the life had been drained out of me. Every glance, every smile, every touch, it all felt like a lie. In the days that followed, I found myself going through the motions, pretending everything was normal even as I was unraveling inside. I would lie awake at night, listening to the sound of his breathing, wondering who he really was, if I'd ever truly known him at all. My mind kept replaying the moment I'd seen them together, the look on his face, the way he'd held her like she was his entire world. But the worst part was the silence, the secrets he kept, the lies he told, all of it unspoken, hovering between us like a dark shadow. I couldn't confront him, couldn't bring myself to force him to tell the truth. Part of me was still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation, that he'd look me in the eyes and tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that he loved me and only me. But deep down, I knew better. I'd seen the truth with my own eyes, felt it in the pit of my stomach every time he looked at his phone or left the house without an explanation. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, needed to know the full extent of his betrayal. I waited until he was asleep, his phone lying on the nightstand beside him. My hand shook as I picked it up, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. I unlocked his phone, scrolling through messages, emails, anything that might give me a clue. And there it was, a string of messages between him and the woman from the restaurant, messages that left no room for doubt. He told her he loved her, that he missed her, that he couldn't wait to leave me so they could finally be together. The words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I felt sick, my stomach churning as the reality of his betrayal settled over me. This wasn't just a fling, a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a planned escape, a life he was building without me. I closed the phone, putting it back on the nightstand, and sat there in the darkness, feeling like I'd lost everything. The love, the trust, the future I'd believed in. It was all gone, replaced by a painful truth I could never forget. But as the anger, the sadness, and the heartbreak swirled inside me, I knew one thing for certain. This double life he'd built, the lies he'd told, the betrayal he'd hidden in the shadows, it was all going to come to light, and when it did, there would be no escaping the truth. The days after I found the messages were like living in a nightmare. Every word, every lie, every whispered promise in those texts haunted me. My mind wouldn't stop replaying what I'd read. I love you. I can't wait to leave her. The man I thought I knew, the man I'd loved and trusted, had made plans to tear our life apart, and I was the last to know. As I moved through each day, it felt like I was watching my life from the outside, detached, going through the motions. I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed to know the full extent of his lies, the secrets he'd been hiding right under my nose. If I was going to bring this to light, I wanted to do it on my terms, with every piece of his deception laid out before him. He wouldn't be able to lie, to manipulate his way out of this. I'd make sure of it. I started paying closer attention to everything he did, every call he took behind closed doors, every late night he claimed was work. I noticed how he'd check his phone with a slight smile, quickly hiding the screen whenever I was near. He thought he was being clever, that I was oblivious. But the truth was, I was watching him more closely than ever, piecing together every clue, every detail that would bring his double life crashing down. One afternoon, while he was out running errands, I went through his emails and texts. I found hotel bookings, receipts from expensive restaurants, even concert tickets to shows he'd never mentioned to me. He'd been living a life I knew nothing about, spending money on weekends away, gifts, and God knows what else. Each discovery was like a stab to the heart, a reminder that the man I'd shared my life with was a stranger. But it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that he had chosen her over me, that he'd built this secret life with someone else, putting her first while I was left in the dark. I thought back to all the times I'd tried to reach out to him, all the times I'd asked if he was okay, if something was wrong. He'd brush me off, lied to my face, while all along he was planning to leave me. The anger grew with each passing day, burning like a fire inside me. I could barely look at him without feeling a surge of fury and betrayal. He was still living his lie, pretending everything was fine, coming home to me every night as if he wasn't hiding a whole other life. But the anger was my strength. It kept me going, reminding me that I didn't deserve this, that I deserved the truth. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself forever. I wanted to expose him, to let everyone see the truth, to let him feel even a fraction of the humiliation and pain he'd caused me. I began to plan, thinking of how I could bring this to light in a way he'd never forget. The idea came to me during a family dinner, a moment when he'd be surrounded by the people who loved him, the people he'd betrayed just as much as he'd betrayed me. I wanted everyone to know the truth, to see the man he really was. The night of the family gathering came sooner than I expected. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement, knowing that by the end of the evening, everything would be different. I spent extra time getting ready, putting on a dress he'd always complimented, making myself look as calm and put together as possible. If he was going to see me break, it wouldn't be tonight. Tonight, I would be strong, unshaken, and ready to confront him head on. As our family gathered around the table, I could feel the tension building inside me. Daniel played his usual role, laughing, telling stories, acting like the perfect husband. He had no idea what was coming, no idea that his lies were about to be exposed. I watched him, waiting for the right moment, feeling the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on me. Then, it happened. His phone buzzed on the table, and for a split second he froze, glancing at it nervously before reaching to turn it off. But I was quicker. I grabbed the phone before he could stop me, my heart pounding as I looked at the screen. There it was, a message from her, the woman he'd chosen over me, over our family. "Can't wait to see you tonight," it read, a final confirmation of everything I already knew. I looked up, meeting his eyes across the table. The room fell silent, everyone staring at me, at him, at the phone in my hand. His face went pale, the mask slipping for the first time as he realized what was happening. "What's this, Daniel?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. Care to explain who's waiting to see you tonight? He stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but there was no way out. I could see the guilt, the fear in his eyes, as he realized he was trapped, his lies finally laid bare for everyone to see. My family sat in stunned silence, watching as the man they thought they knew was exposed as a liar, a cheat. My mother gasped, covering her mouth in shock, while his parents looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction as I watched him struggle, the truth finally catching up to him. He tried to grab my arm to lead me away from the table, but I pulled back, standing my ground. No, Daniel, we're not doing this in private. You made this decision. You brought her into our lives. Now everyone here deserves to know the truth. The anger I'd been holding back spilled out, each word a release of the pain he'd caused me. I told them everything, about the messages, the hotel bookings, the nights he'd spent lying to me, to all of us. I didn't hold back, letting every bit of betrayal, every detail of his deceit, fall like a hammer on the person he'd pretended to be. The room was tense, filled with shock and hurt. My family and his family looked at him, no longer with admiration or love, but with the realization that he had betrayed not only me, but everyone in that room. His mother started to cry, his father shook his head in disappointment, and my own parents looked at him like they'd never seen him before. For the first time, I felt free. Free from the lies, the doubt, the constant wondering. I had taken control, made him face the consequences of his actions. He could no longer pretend, no longer hide behind his charming facade. When he finally tried to speak, to explain himself, his words felt empty, meaningless. He mumbled something about mistakes, about needing space, but it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no going back. I trusted you, I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay strong. I trusted you with my heart, my life, and you threw it all away for someone else. You didn't just betray me, Daniel. You betrayed everyone here. He looked around the room, his face crumpling as he saw the disappointment, the anger in every face around him. The man who had once been loved and respected was now nothing more than a liar, a coward, exposed for who he really was. I turned to my family, apologizing for having to drag them into this mess, for having to expose the truth in such a painful way. But they hugged me, supported me, letting me know that I wasn't alone, that they were there for me, that they'd stand by me as I picked up the pieces of my life. As I walked out of that room, leaving Daniel behind, I felt a sense of relief I hadn't known in months. The weight of his lies, his betrayal, had finally lifted, replaced by a new strength, a determination to rebuild, to start fresh without the shadow of his deceit hanging over me. Daniel tried to follow me, to say something, to beg for forgiveness, but I kept walking, not looking back. The life we'd built, the trust we'd shared, it was gone, destroyed by his choices, his lies. There was no going back, no fixing what he'd broken. As I stepped into the night, feeling the cool air on my face, I realized I was free. Free from the secrets, the betrayal, the doubts that had haunted me. And though the path ahead was uncertain, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let someone make me feel this way again. This was the end of our story, but it was also the beginning of something new. And as I walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace, a calm that came from knowing that I had faced the truth, confronted the lies, and come out stronger on the other side. After I walked out that night, leaving Daniel and his lies behind, I felt a sense of relief that was almost surreal. But it didn't take long for the reality of what had just happened to crash over me. I had just exposed my husband's affair to both of our families, shattered our life in front of everyone we cared about, and walked away from a decade-long relationship. As empowering as it felt, the pain crept in almost immediately. I was alone, and the man I had trusted with my heart had destroyed it for a life I never knew he was living. The quiet of my empty house felt like a hollow echo of the life I'd thought I had. I moved around each room, seeing bits and pieces of the memories we'd shared, each one now stained with the knowledge of his betrayal. Our wedding photo on the mantel, the souvenirs from our trips together, even the little notes we used to leave each other. All of it felt like a cruel reminder of what I'd believed in, of the love I thought was real. I couldn't bear to look at them, so I pulled them down one by one, each piece feeling like another weight lifted, but also another tear in my heart. I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by the silence, feeling the full weight of everything I had lost. It was more than just Daniel. It was the future we'd dreamed of, the trust I'd held in him, and in a way, my own sense of self. How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so blind to his lies, so willing to overlook the little signs that now seemed glaringly obvious? I felt foolish, humiliated, as if I'd been a part of a cruel game where everyone knew the rules except me. I couldn't sleep that night, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment, every lie, every time he'd left me to be with her. The hurt was overwhelming, suffocating, but as the hours passed, that hurt started to turn into something else. Anger, pure, unfiltered anger. How dare he? How dare he destroy our life, our love, and then try to brush it off as if it were nothing? He had stood there, in front of everyone we knew, and tried to lie his way out of it to minimize the pain he'd caused. And for what? A thrill? A distraction? The man I had trusted with everything had taken my love and twisted it into something I couldn't even recognize. The anger kept me going in those first few days. Every time the sadness threatened to pull me under, the anger would flare up, reminding me that I was stronger than this, that I didn't deserve what he had done to me. I had given him everything, my heart, my trust, my loyalty, and he had thrown it all away. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became to rebuild my life, to move forward without him, to show him and myself that I was capable of happiness, of strength, even after everything he had done. I spent the next few days clearing out our home, taking down every reminder of him, of the life we'd shared. I wanted a fresh start, a clean slate, a space that was mine and mine alone. Each photo, each memento I packed away felt like shedding a layer of the pain he'd left behind. It was freeing, empowering, and with each item I put away, I felt a little bit lighter, a little bit more in control. But the journey was far from easy. There were moments when the anger would fade, leaving only the hollow ache of heartbreak. I'd find myself staring at the empty spaces in our home, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Friends and family reached out, offering their support, their sympathy, but it was hard to accept it. They didn't understand the full weight of the betrayal, the way it had shattered not only my trust in him, but in myself. I had trusted him blindly, and now I was left questioning everything, my own judgment, my ability to see the truth, my worth. One night, I found myself sitting in our living room, scrolling through old photos. There we were, laughing, holding each other, looking at each other like we were each other's entire world. And now, those smiles, those touches, felt like a lie, a mask he'd worn to hide the person he truly was. The pain was overwhelming, and for the first time since the confrontation, I broke down completely, letting the hurt, the anger, the betrayal wash over me. But as I sat there, crying, feeling every bit of the heartbreak he'd caused, something inside me shifted. I realized that I didn't have to let his betrayal define me. I had been faithful, loving, trusting, and those were qualities I could still be proud of. He had taken advantage of my love, of my loyalty. But that didn't make me weak. If anything, it made him the weak one. The one who couldn't handle honesty, commitment, or the depth of real love. In the days that followed, I began to find a new strength within myself. I started focusing on me, on the things that made me happy, the things I'd put aside during our marriage. I signed up for a painting class, something I'd always wanted to try but had never found the time for. I spent weekends exploring new places, taking long walks, reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with over the years. For the first time in a long time, I was living for myself, and it felt good, liberating even. I also began to realize that I wasn't alone. Friends who had once been distant reached out, sharing their own stories of heartbreak, of betrayal, of rebuilding. It was comforting, knowing that I wasn't the only one who had been hurt, that there were others who had gone through similar pain and had come out stronger on the other side. Their stories gave me hope, a reminder that healing was possible, that happiness was still within reach. But it wasn't just about healing from his betrayal. It was about finding a new sense of self-worth, of valuing myself in a way I hadn't before. For too long, I had let my worth be defined by his love, his approval, his attention. Now I was learning to see my own value, to appreciate the qualities that made me who I was: kindness, resilience, loyalty. I didn't need his validation to feel complete. I was enough, just as I was. One afternoon, I decided to take a trip by myself, something I'd always wanted to do, but had never felt brave enough to try. I packed a bag, booked a small cabin by the beach, and set off on my own, determined to spend time reconnecting with myself, finding peace in the solitude. The first night was difficult. The quiet felt almost too heavy, the emptiness too overwhelming. But as the days passed, I found a new sense of calm, a quiet strength that came from being alone, from facing my thoughts, my fears, my dreams. Sitting by the ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore, I felt a sense of clarity, of acceptance. Yes, he had hurt me, broken my trust, shattered the life we'd built. But that pain, that betrayal, didn't have to define my future. I could still create a life filled with love, with happiness, with purpose, even if it looked different from what I'd once imagined. When I returned home, I felt like a new person, stronger, more confident, ready to face whatever came next. I started making changes, not just in my home, but in my life. I set new goals, focused on my career, surrounded myself with people who valued and respected me. I created a life that was mine, free from his lies, his betrayals, his shadows. Eventually, I even found it in myself to forgive him, not for his sake, but for mine. I didn't want to carry the weight of his betrayal, to let it poison my future. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what he'd done. It was about letting go, releasing the anger, the resentment, the hurt that had held me back for so long. In forgiving him, I freed myself, allowing myself to move forward without the burden of his choices. Now, as I look back on everything, I see it as a chapter in my life, a lesson that taught me about resilience, about self-worth, about the power of healing. I am no longer the woman who was betrayed, who was broken. I am someone stronger, someone who faced heartbreak and came out on the other side, wiser, braver, and more in tune with who I am. And for the first time, I can say that I am truly happy. Happy with the person I've become. Happy with the life I'm creating. And most of all, happy with the knowledge that I am enough, just as I am. Weeks turned into months, and each day brought me closer to a version of myself I had almost forgotten. I felt lighter, like I was shedding a past that no longer served me. Life was finally starting to make sense again. I was building a life rooted in my own choices, my own dreams, my own happiness. But there was something more, something I hadn't expected. Along with the healing came a small, cautious desire for something new. I didn't know exactly what it was at first, but as time went on, I realized it was the hope of opening my heart again. It started with small moments, a chance encounter at a bookstore, a kind smile from a stranger, a lighthearted conversation with a friend that left me feeling warmer inside. Each of these encounters was a reminder that love didn't have to be tied to the pain of my past. It could be something entirely different, something gentle and uplifting, without the weight of betrayal. But there was one encounter in particular that changed everything. One Saturday, I decided to visit a local art gallery. It was the first time I'd been out for something purely for myself, and it felt freeing. I strolled through the exhibits, feeling the peace that came from seeing the world through others' eyes. And then, as I was admiring a painting, a voice behind me said, "It's beautiful, isn't it? There's something comforting about those colors." I turned around and met the gaze of a man with kind, warm eyes and a gentle smile. He introduced himself as Adam, and we began chatting about art, life, and the exhibit. His presence felt different, calming yet exciting in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. He didn't ask too many questions, didn't press me for details. He He simply enjoyed the moment, letting our conversation flow naturally, like we were two old friends rediscovering each other after years apart. Over the next hour, we wandered through the gallery together, sharing our thoughts on the art, laughing at each other's quirky observations, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was refreshing, the ease with which I could be myself around him. I didn't feel the need to hide or pretend. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, really seen, by someone who had no expectations, no hidden agendas. As we left the gallery, Adam asked if I'd like to join him for coffee. Part of me hesitated, afraid of where this could lead, afraid of opening myself up to the possibility of hurt again. But another part of me, the part that had been learning to trust, to heal, wanted to say yes. So I did. We spent hours at the cafe, sharing stories about our lives, our interests, our dreams. Adam listened to me, truly listened, with a patience and understanding that felt new and comforting. He didn't pry into my past, didn't press me for details about the scars I carried. Instead, he shared parts of his own life, his own struggles, in a way that felt honest and real. By the end of the evening, I felt a connection with him that was both surprising and comforting. He gave me his number, saying, "No pressure. Just call if you'd ever like to chat or hang out again." His gentle approach, his respect for my boundaries, made me feel safe. And for the first time since my world had fallen apart, I felt a tiny spark of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a future where I could love again without fear. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about Adam. His kindness, his warmth, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. It was different from anything I'd known before. Different from the intense, sometimes overwhelming love I'd felt with Daniel. This was quieter, steadier, a love that felt like it had room to grow without expectations or pressure. We met a few more times, each encounter leaving me feeling more at ease, more comfortable with the idea of letting someone in. Adam was patient, never pushing me, always respecting my pace. He was like a breath of fresh air, a reminder that love didn't have to be complicated or painful. It could be simple, honest, and fulfilling. One evening, as we walked through a nearby park, he took my hand, his fingers warm and gentle against mine. It was such a simple gesture, yet it felt like a promise of safety, of understanding, of a future that wasn't weighed down by the shadows of the past. I looked at him, feeling a rush of gratitude for this unexpected connection, for the chance to feel joy, hope, and excitement again. With time, I shared bits and pieces of my story with him, letting him see the pain I'd endured, the betrayal that had shattered my trust. Adam listened without judgment, his hand steady in mine as I spoke, his eyes filled with empathy and understanding. He didn't try to fix me or offer solutions. He simply listened, letting me be vulnerable, letting me share my truth in my own way. And in that vulnerability, I found a strength I hadn't known I possessed. I realized that I could be honest about my past without letting it define me, that I could share my pain without being consumed by it. Adam became a source of comfort, of support, but he also reminded me that I was capable of healing, of rebuilding, of finding happiness on my own terms. Our relationship grew slowly, each step taken with care and intention. We spent time exploring new places, trying new things, sharing parts of ourselves we hadn't shown to anyone else. There was a sense of freedom in our connection, a lightness that made me feel alive, hopeful, like the world was opening up in ways I hadn't thought possible. As my heart healed, I also found myself letting go of the remnants of my past. I no longer held on to the anger, the hurt, or the betrayal. Those feelings had been part of my journey, but they no longer held power over me. I could see Daniel's actions for what they were, a reflection of his choices, his weaknesses, and not a reflection of my worth. I had loved deeply, openly, and with everything I had, and that was something to be proud of. One evening, as Adam and I watched the sunset together, I felt a peace settle over me, a sense of closure that had once seemed impossible. I realized that I was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I had gained: strength, resilience, a deeper understanding of who I was and what I wanted from life. And I knew that I was ready to move forward, to embrace this new chapter with an open heart. With Adam by my side, I began to dream again, to see a future filled with love, laughter, and growth. I wasn't afraid of the past or of the possibility of getting hurt. I had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, and I had come out stronger, more confident, more in tune with myself. And in that strength, I found the courage to love again, to build a life that was truly my own. Our love was different from what I had known before. It wasn't filled with the highs and lows, the intense emotions that had once defined my relationship with Daniel. Instead, it was a steady, comforting presence, a love that grew slowly, like the roots of a tree sinking deep into the earth. It was a love built on trust, respect, and a shared commitment to honesty, and it felt like coming home. As the months went by, I found myself fully embracing this new life, this new love. I had learned to forgive, to let go, and to cherish the moments that made life beautiful. And with each passing day, I felt a sense of gratitude for the journey I had taken, for the lessons I had learned, and for the person I had become. Adam and I began talking about the future, about the dreams we wanted to pursue together, the life we wanted to build. There was no rush, no urgency. We both knew the value of taking things slow, of letting our love grow naturally, without pressure or expectations. It was a refreshing, peaceful way to approach a relationship, and it allowed me to feel fully secure, fully grounded in who I was and what I wanted. Looking back, I could see how far I had come, how much I had grown since the day I discovered Daniel's betrayal. The pain, the anger, the heartbreak. It had all been part of my journey, a journey that had led me to this place of healing, of self-discovery, of new love. And as I stood by Adam's side, feeling the warmth of his presence, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. In the end, I found peace not by forgetting the past, but by accepting it, by allowing it to shape me, to teach me, to guide me toward a future filled with love and hope. I had lost so much, but I had gained so much more. A deeper understanding of myself, a stronger sense of self-worth, and a love that felt pure, honest, and real. I was no longer defined by the pain of betrayal, but by the strength I had found within myself, by the courage I had shown in opening my heart again. And for the first time, I could see a future that was bright, filled with possibilities, and rooted in a love that was true. With Adam, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the resilience, the confidence, and the love to face any challenge, any joy, any moment with an open heart. And as I looked at him, smiling by my side, I knew that this was only the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, one that I was finally ready to write. In the months that followed, Adam and I continued to grow closer. Our relationship was no longer just a comforting connection. It was blossoming into something deeper, more meaningful, and I felt myself letting go of every hesitation, every trace of the past that had once held me back. For the first time in a long time, I felt secure, loved, and free. One evening, Adam invited me over for dinner at his place. He cooked a beautiful meal, and as we shared laughter over a bottle of wine, I felt a warmth between us that was both familiar and thrilling. It wasn't just attraction. It was a true sense of belonging. We moved to the couch after dinner, talking about everything and nothing, his hand finding mine as the evening grew late. In that moment, he looked at me, his eyes filled with tenderness and something more, something that made my heart race. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and I felt the electricity of his touch, the way it set my skin alight. Without a word, he leaned closer, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was soft at first, like he was asking for permission. And when I kissed him back, it felt like the final barrier I'd been holding onto dissolved completely. Our kiss deepened, and the world around us seemed to disappear. In his arms, I felt safe, cherished, like every piece of me mattered, like I was whole. That night, for the first time, I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to let go of everything that had held me back. I felt truly connected, truly alive with a man who saw me, who valued me, who made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. In the days that followed, our connection only grew. We spent more and more time together, exploring the city, discovering new favorite spots, and sharing parts of ourselves we hadn't revealed to anyone else. With Adam, there was no pressure, no fear of judgment. He understood the weight of my past, the scars I carried, and he held space for me, never asking me to be anything other than myself. One weekend, Adam surprised me with a trip to a cabin by the lake. We spent the days hiking, laughing, and sharing quiet moments surrounded by nature. But the nights were something else entirely. Moments filled with passion, intimacy, and a connection that felt like it was written in the stars. Each touch, each kiss, was a reminder of the life I was building, a life filled with love, trust, and the thrill of something real. As we lay together under the stars, his arms wrapped around me, I felt a peace I had never known before. I told him things I had never shared with anyone, let him see parts of me that I had once kept hidden, and he did the same, opening up about his own experiences, his own heartaches, his own dreams for the future. It was as if we were two souls finding their way to each other, two hearts discovering that love could be simple, that it didn't have to be filled with pain or betrayal. Returning from that trip, I knew that my life had changed forever. Adam had become more than just someone I loved. He was my partner, my confidant, my best friend. Together, we started to talk about our future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. It was exciting. The thought of building a life with someone who was kind, genuine, and completely committed to honesty and respect. But with this deepening love also came the need for closure with my past. I knew that to fully move forward, I needed to confront Daniel one last time. There were still things left unsaid, questions that lingered in the back of my mind, doubts that I wanted to lay to rest. I didn't need his validation, but I needed to look him in the eyes and let him know that his betrayal no longer defined me, that I had found happiness without him. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I received a message from Daniel saying he wanted to meet, that he wanted to explain himself. At first, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear his excuses. But then I realized this was the moment I had been waiting for, a chance to close that chapter for good. When I met him at a cafe, he looked surprised, almost taken aback by my calmness, my confidence. He started with a hollow apology, his words sounding rehearsed, like he'd practiced them 100 times. But I listened, letting him say what he needed to say, feeling strangely detached from his words. He spoke of mistakes, of regrets, of things he wished he could take back. But his words felt empty, like they were meant more to ease his guilt than to genuinely seek forgiveness. When he finally finished, I took a deep breath, looking him straight in the eyes. "Daniel, I don't need an apology. What you did was wrong, and it hurt me deeply. But I've moved on. I found a happiness that doesn't include you, a life that is stronger, better, without the weight of lies and betrayal. I hope you find peace, but that peace is no longer my responsibility." He looked taken aback, perhaps surprised by my strength, my lack of bitterness. But I meant every word. As I walked out of that cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of freedom that was both exhilarating and empowering. I was finally free from the past, from the pain, from the part of my life that had once defined me. And now I was ready to fully embrace the future I was building with Adam. Back in Adam's arms, I shared the story of that meeting, feeling lighter with each word. He held me, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You deserve every happiness in the world, Emily. I'm so lucky to be a part of this journey with you." In the weeks that followed, Adam and I continued to build our life together, creating new memories, new traditions, a new sense of family that was uniquely ours. We spent quiet mornings together, sipping coffee and talking about our dreams. We took spontaneous road trips, explored hidden trails, and danced under the moonlight, savoring every moment, every shared experience. One evening, Adam surprised me with a beautiful dinner, candlelit and intimate, his eyes filled with love as he took my hand in his. "Emily," he began, his voice soft yet steady, "I want you to know that loving you has been the greatest gift of my life. You've shown me what it means to truly love, to truly connect, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." As he slipped a ring onto my finger, tears filled my eyes, tears of joy, gratitude, and love. This was the life I had fought for, the love I had waited for, the happiness I had never imagined possible. And as I looked at Adam, I knew that this was my forever, a love that was pure, honest, and true. Our wedding was a simple, beautiful affair, surrounded by the people we loved. I walked down the aisle feeling a sense of peace, a sense of fulfillment, knowing that this was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, with trust, with a love that was unwavering and strong. As Adam and I danced together that night, our friends and family watching, I felt a gratitude that was almost overwhelming. I had gone through the darkest moments, faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but I had come out on the other side, stronger, braver, and ready to love with my whole heart. And as I looked into Adam's eyes, I knew that this was only the beginning of our story, a story built on resilience, on trust, and on a love that would last a lifetime. In the weeks following our wedding, life felt like it had finally settled into a beautiful, peaceful rhythm. Every day with Adam was a reminder of how far I'd come, of the strength I had found within myself, and of the love I'd opened my heart to despite everything I had been through. It felt surreal sometimes, waking up beside him, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, knowing that we were building a life rooted in trust, honesty, and genuine joy. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting more and more on my journey. Everything I had faced, the lessons I had learned, and the unexpected happiness I had found on the other side of heartbreak. There were times when I would catch myself in quiet moments, feeling a rush of gratitude for the life I was now living, a life I had fought so hard to create. One afternoon, Adam and I decided to spend the day at a quiet park near our home. We brought a picnic, a few blankets, and a book we had been reading together, a small ritual that had become part of our routine. As we sat under the shade of a large oak tree, I found myself opening up to him about the reflections that had been weighing on my mind. "Sometimes I can't believe how much my life has changed," I said, my voice soft as I looked out over the serene landscape. There was a time when I thought I'd never be able to move past the pain, that I'd be defined by what happened forever. But now I feel like that chapter is finally behind me. Adam looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding and encouragement. "You're stronger than you realize, Emily. You faced everything with such courage, and you came out on the other side with so much grace. That's something to be proud of." His words touched me deeply, and I realized how right he was. The journey I had been on had been anything but easy. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of intense sadness that had threatened to overwhelm me. But through it all, I had learned to find strength in vulnerability, to see my scars not as weaknesses, but as reminders of my resilience. We spent hours talking that afternoon, sharing our dreams for the future, our hopes for the life we wanted to build together. Adam had a way of making every conversation feel meaningful, of reminding me that the possibilities were endless, that the life we were creating was ours to shape however we wished. It was a freeing realization, one that filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Adam took my hand and looked into my eyes. "Emily, I want you to know that I am here for every step of this journey. Whatever dreams you have, whatever goals you set, I'll be right there beside you. You don't have to face anything alone anymore." His words brought tears to my eyes, and I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. I knew that the love we shared was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a love that was built on mutual respect, on a deep understanding of each other's pasts, and a commitment to our shared future. In Adam, I had found not only a partner, but a true friend, someone who valued me for who I was and encouraged me to continue growing into the person I wanted to be. As our life together unfolded, I found myself embracing new passions and setting new goals. I took up painting, a hobby I had always wanted to pursue, but had never made time for. I poured my emotions, my reflections, my journey into each piece, and it became a form of healing, a way to express everything I had been through. Adam was my biggest supporter, always encouraging me to follow my passions, to explore the things that brought me joy. I also found a new sense of fulfillment in helping others who had been through similar experiences. I joined a support group sharing my story with people who were navigating their own heartbreak, their own journeys of self-discovery. It was empowering, realizing that my story, my experiences, could offer hope to someone else. I met women who had been betrayed, who had faced loss, who were struggling to rebuild their lives, and I shared with them the lessons I had learned, the strength I had found. One evening, after one of these support group meetings, I sat down with Adam and told him about the stories I had heard, the people I had met. It's incredible, Adam, hearing their stories, being able to offer them even a little bit of hope. It reminds me of how far I've come, of the strength I've found in this journey. He smiled, taking my hand in his. You're giving them something invaluable, Emily. You're showing them that healing is possible, that there's light on the other side. That's a gift not everyone can offer. His words stayed with me, and I realized that my journey had become about more than just my own healing. It had become a way to inspire others, to remind them that they were not alone, that they had the power to rebuild, to find happiness, to create a future filled with hope and possibility. Our life together continued to grow richer, filled with moments of joy, laughter, and quiet contentment. Adam and I began to travel, exploring new places, experiencing new cultures, and savoring the beauty of the world around us. Each trip, each adventure, was a reminder of how much life had to offer, of the endless possibilities that lay before us. We laughed together, tried new things, and embraced every experience with an open heart, knowing that we were creating memories that would last a lifetime. In those moments, I realized that my heart was fully open, that I was no longer holding back, no longer afraid of what the future might bring. I was living fully, embracing each day with gratitude and joy. The shadows of my past no longer haunted me. They were simply a part of my story, a chapter that had led me to the happiness I was now experiencing. One evening, as Adam and I sat together on the balcony of our home, watching the stars twinkle in the sky, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I thought back to the woman I had been before, the woman who had been broken, betrayed, and lost, and I realized that I had transformed. I was no longer defined by the pain of my past, but by the strength I had found, the love I had embraced, and the life I was now living. Adam looked at me, sensing my thoughts, and he pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me. You're happy, aren't you? He asked, his voice soft. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words in every fiber of my being. Yes, Adam, I am. I've found a happiness I never thought possible, a love that feels like home. As I looked out at the night sky, I knew that my journey was far from over. There were still dreams to chase, still goals to achieve, still memories to create. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever lay ahead, that I had the strength, the resilience, and the love to face anything that came my way. With Adam by my side, I felt invincible, capable of achieving anything, of creating a life that was filled with purpose, passion, and love. I was no longer haunted by the shadows of my past. I was illuminated by the light of my future, a future that was bright, beautiful, and uniquely mine. And as I leaned into Adam's embrace, feeling the warmth of his love, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. My journey had brought me here, to this moment, to this life, and I was ready to embrace it fully, with an open heart and a spirit that was unbreakable. This was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, with possibility, and with a love that would last a lifetime. And as I looked at Adam, my heart swelling with gratitude and joy, I knew that our story was only just beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Life can be filled with twists, heartbreaks, and unexpected turns, but through resilience and self-discovery, we can all find a path to healing and true happiness. If you're ready for more stories of strength, love, and transformation, hit subscribe and join me in uncovering life's lessons together. Let's keep growing and moving forward, one story at a time. I was living fully, embracing each day with gratitude and joy. The shadows of my past no longer haunted me. They were simply a part of my story, a chapter that had led me to the happiness I was now experiencing. One evening, as Adam and I sat together on the balcony of our home, watching the stars twinkle in the sky, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I thought back to the woman I had been before, the woman who had been broken, betrayed, and lost, and I realized that I had transformed. I was no longer defined by the pain of my past, but by the strength I had found, the love I had embraced, and the life I was now living. Adam looked at me, sensing my thoughts, and he pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me. "You're happy, aren't you?" he asked, his voice soft. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words in every fiber of my being. "Yes, Adam, I am. I found a happiness I never thought possible, a love that feels like home." As I looked out at the night sky, I knew that my journey was far from over. There were still dreams to chase, still goals to achieve, still memories to create. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever lay ahead, that I had the strength, the resilience, and the love to face anything that came my way. With Adam by my side, I felt invincible, capable of achieving anything, of creating a life that was filled with purpose, passion, and love. I was no longer haunted by the shadows of my past. I was illuminated by the light of my future, a future that was bright, beautiful, and uniquely mine. And as I leaned into Adam's embrace, feeling the warmth of his love, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. My journey had brought me here, to this moment, to this life, and I was ready to embrace it fully, with an open heart and a spirit that was unbreakable. This was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, with possibility, and with a love that would last a lifetime. And as I looked at Adam, my heart swelling with gratitude and joy, I knew that our story was only just beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Life can be filled with twists, heartbreaks, and unexpected turns, but through resilience and self-discovery, we can all find a path to healing and true happiness. If you're ready for more stories of strength, love, and transformation, hit subscribe and join me in uncovering life's lessons together. Let's keep growing and moving forward, one story at a time.